Have you ever wondered what happens when someone's self-righteous fury collides with their own ignorance? The morning sun barely crept through the blinds of my small apartment, but the peace was shattered by the screech of packing tape being ripped from a roll. I jolted awake, heart pounding, and stumbled to my front door, only to find it sealed shut with thick layers of industrial tape. A note, scrawled in aggressive red marker, was pinned to the doorframe. Violations detected. Fix your disgraceful property or face consequences. Karen, HOA president. My blood boiled. Karen, the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek Estates, had crossed a line. Little did she know, I wasn't just a tenant, I was the county housing inspector. I'd moved into this modest apartment complex 3 months ago, not because I couldn't afford better, but because I wanted to live quietly while doing my job, ensuring safe, fair housing for everyone in the county. My role required discretion, so I kept my badge and title under wraps. To the residents, I was just Marcus, the quiet guy in Unit 12 who kept to himself. But Karen? She'd made it her mission to terrorize me from day one. My crime? A single potted plant on my porch, which she deemed a visual blight on the community. Never mind that her own yard was a gaudy mess of flamingo statues and clashing garden gnomes. Karen's rules applied to everyone but herself. She wasn't just loud, she was a walking caricature of entitlement. Her face, perpetually twisted into a scowl, seemed to carry the weight of every petty grievance she'd ever held. At community meetings, she'd waddle to the podium, her oversized floral dresses straining at the seams, and lecture us on standards, while her voice dripped with venom. She'd fine people for cracked mailboxes, untrimmed hedges, or even parking a car too close to her designated spot. No one dared challenge her. The HOA board was her personal fan club, nodding along like obedient puppets. But taping my door shut? That was war. I grabbed a utility knife and sliced through the tape, the sticky residue clinging to my fingers like Karen's spite. Stepping outside, I saw her across the courtyard, arms crossed, glaring at me from her porch. Her round face, flushed with triumph, made my stomach churn. "You're lucky I didn't call the authorities," she bellowed, her voice carrying to every corner of the complex. "That plant is a fire hazard, and your blinds are unapproved colors." I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to shout back. Instead, I smiled tightly and said, "I'll handle it, Karen." She huffed, satisfied, and waddled back inside. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, my inspector's badge glinting under the lamp. Karen had no idea who she was messing with, but I wasn't about to reveal my hand yet. I'd seen her type before, bullies who thrived on power trips, oblivious to the consequences of their actions. My job had taught me patience, but it also taught me how to hit back where it hurt. I pulled out my laptop and started reviewing the HOA's records, which I had access to as part of my county duties. What I found was a goldmine. Karen's reign of terror was built on a house of cards. Her own property was a walking code violation. Faulty wiring, unpermitted additions, and a shed that was practically a hazmat zone. Karen's home was a disaster waiting to happen. She'd been dodging inspections for years, likely because she intimidated the last inspector into looking the other way. But I wasn't intimidated. I started drafting a report, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Karen wanted to play dirty? I'd play smarter. The next day, I was sipping coffee on my porch when a new figure appeared in the courtyard, a wiry man in a faded flannel shirt, carrying a clipboard and a nervous expression. "Excuse me," he said, glancing at my unit number. "I'm Tom, from the utility company. Got a complaint about your meter." I raised an eyebrow. "Complaint? From who?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. Karen. She says your meter's tampered with. I'm just here to check." I laughed, loud and sharp. Karen's pettiness knew no bounds. I let Tom inspect the meter pristine, of course, and sent him on his way. But his visit sparked an idea. Tom wasn't just a utility worker. He was a witness to Karen's overreach, and I'd need allies like him. Over the next week, Karen escalated. She left more notes, each nastier than the last. Your trash cans are an inch too far from the curb. Your doorbell is too loud. She even rallied a few neighbors to shun me, whispering about my non-compliance at the mailboxes. But I wasn't idle. I quietly interviewed other residents, uncovering a trail of Karen's abuses. There was Mrs. Lopez, fined $200 for her son's skateboard in the driveway. Mr. Patel, bullied into removing his cultural flags because they clashed with the HOA's aesthetic. And then there was Sarah, a single mom who'd been threatened with eviction over a late fee Karen arbitrarily doubled. The anger in their voices fueled me. Karen wasn't just a nuisance, she was a tyrant. The twist came on a rainy Tuesday when I met Lila, a soft-spoken woman who'd just moved into Unit 8. She approached me at the community mailbox, her eyes darting nervously. You're Marcus, right? The one Karen's targeting. I nodded, wary. I used to live in her old complex, Lila whispered. She got kicked out for forging HOA documents. She's not even supposed to be president. Here she lied about her credentials. My heart raced. This was the ammunition I needed. Lila handed me a USB drive with scanned copies of old records, proof of Karen's fraud. I kept these in case she came after me again, Lila said, her voice trembling but resolute. Do what you need to. Armed with Lila's evidence and my own findings, I scheduled an official county inspection of Willow Creek Estates. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lila, that I was the inspector. On the day of the visit, I wore my county badge and walked the complex with a clipboard, noting every violation. Karen's house was the worst offender. Exposed wires, a leaking roof, and a backyard fence that violated city codes. When I knocked on her door, her scowl faltered for a split second. What's this about? She snapped, eyeing my badge. Routine inspection, I said calmly. Care to explain why your shed's a fire hazard? Her face turned purple, but she said nothing, slamming the door in my face. The HOA meeting that night was electric. Karen stood at the podium, ranting about troublemakers and standards, but the room's mood had shifted. I stepped forward, badge in hand, and the crowd gasped. I'm Marcus Hayes, County Housing Inspector, I said, my voice steady. Karen, your property is in violation of multiple codes, and your leadership is based on forged documents. I held up Lila's USB drive, and the room erupted. Mrs. Lopez stood, shouting about her fines. Mr. Patel waved his band flags. Sarah, tears in her eyes, demanded her money back. Karen sputtered, her face a mask of rage and panic, but no one listened. The board, sensing the tide turning, stripped her of her presidency on the spot. The aftermath was brutal for Karen. The county fined her thousands for her violations, and the HOA sued her for fraud. She tried to sell her house to escape, but no one would buy a property in such disrepair. Last I heard, she was living in a rented trailer, still blaming everyone but herself. The complex, meanwhile, thrived. Lila took over as HOA president, and the rules became fair, the fines reasonable. My potted plant stayed on my porch, and no one taped my door shut again. Karen's downfall wasn't just about her violations, it was about her refusal to see others as equals. She thought she could bully her way to power, but she forgot that power built on lies always crumbles. I learned something, too. Sometimes, the quietest fight is the loudest victory. For every Karen out there, there's a community waiting to rise. Indy.